Imagine another race running alongside the human race. They have the same DNA and genetic code as anyone else. They develop into adults with minds and personalities just like anyone else. But the rest of the world doesn't see them as just like everyone else. And their only purpose in life is to donate their own healthy organs to humans who are ill. According to eNotes.com, this is the plot of Kazuo Ishiguro's book, Never Let Me Go. It follows 3 students in a boarding school that raises clones for the purpose of donating organs. The clones are thought to be subhuman and find out that as clones, they have no civil rights. Perhaps the most bone-chilling aspect of this novel is that something very similar happens today. Only we know it by the name embryonic stem cell research and therapy. As we will see, embryonic stem cell therapy takes parts of a body at the earliest stage of development for the purpose of giving them to another who is ill. But it doesn't have to be this way. Today, I will tell you why. I will show you what adult and embryonic stem cells are, how stem cells can be used, and the scientific and moral reasons why embryonic should not be used. What are stem cells? The National Institutes of Health, or NIH, explains that stem cells are unlike other cells for 2 reasons. First, they are unspecialized cells, able to replicate themselves through cell division. Also, under certain conditions, they can be made into specific organ or tissue cells. As their name implies, embryonic stem cells come from embryos. Adult stem cells can be found in tissues throughout the body and, quote, maintain and repair the tissues in which they are found. How can we use stem cells? Ask 16-year-old Jonna Gelly. Because she received stem cell therapy, she just might be able to answer you. According to the Excel Center's website, Jonna was suffering from cerebral palsy. She received treatment at the Excel Center, quote, a private clinic group and institute for regenerative medicine located in Germany, as their website informs. Adult stem cells were taken out of Jonna's hip bone. Then, after being sent to a lab, were injected into her spine. Jonna can now have small conversations. Where she used to say, "Help Jonna," she can now say, "Mom, can you help me dress?" Jonna's physical education teacher and therapeutic horseback riding instructor have also noticed that they now do not need to prompt Jonna to perform tasks that are part of her regiment. The improvements are small, but good. How are stem cells used in the therapy? The University of Utah states that the goal is to heal tissue that has been damaged and is unable to heal on its own, by transplanting cells into an area that needs more tissue and moving the cells to create healthy tissue. To this day, this has been the most successful method. Here is where the adult versus embryonic debate comes in. Which to use for transplanting? In his article, The Shady Side of Embryonic Stem Cell Therapy, Dr. Stephen Barrett, MD, addresses the hype about using embryonic. He explains that the Embryonic Tissue Center located in Ukraine has claimed their treatments have, quote, achieved positive results in cancer, AIDS, diabetes, multiple sclerosis, Crohn's disease, and more than 50 other diseases and conditions. However, later in the article, he poses these questions. How credible are the claims? How are the cells prepared? Are steps taken to ensure that they are not infectious? How is it determined that the patients have no side effects? Does the clinic follow its patients and keep score? He also asks if the doctors running the clinic have published their results, and if, quote, their theories and methodology make sense. What is the reality of embryonic stem cell therapy? One is uncertainty. It's still in the experimental stage. On the 12th of October 2010, USA Today reported of the first patient to receive injections of embryonic stem cells to treat spinal cord problems. The results are unavailable. However, on their website, Excel Center mentions 15 patients who showed improvements in spinal cord problems after adult stem cell therapy. They weren't cured, but their lives became easier. Adult stem cells are also being experimented with for cancer treatment. PR Newswire reports that the leading biopharmaceutical company, RNL Bio Company Limited, that specializes in adult stem cells, announced a July 27th breakthrough. In a preclinical study they did, RNL Bio took mice and injected melanoma into them, injecting human stem cells into a group of them later on. In that group, the size of the cancer went down, and the mice had lengthened lifespans. Which transplant would you ask doctors for? Another problem is rejection of the cells. The National Institutes of Health explains that adult stem cells taken from a patient's own cells make rejection less probable. This would eliminate drugs to suppress the immune system, and those drugs can have negative side effects. Why do scientists want to use embryonic stem cells? MayoClinic.com states because these cells are pluripotent, meaning they can change into any kind of cell, they have the best potential. However, they also state it was believed that adult stem cells had more limited capabilities, but that emerging science suggests otherwise. And it does. Mayo Clinic also states that adult stem cells can be reprogrammed to act like embryonic. What arguments do embryonic stem cell advocates still bring up? Many believe justification comes in with the source of the cells they use. According to the NIH, the researchers work with leftover cells from in vitro fertilization. The cells are given with the consent of the donors. Why do they use these? Here's what the Massachusetts Institute of Technology has to say. The eggs are frozen in nitrogen until they are disposed of. And because they only have the ability to become human, since they will never be put into a woman's uterus, how could they be called human? They also say some would argue about the intended path of an embryo, meaning if it's put in a uterus, it's intended for life. But if it's left from fertilization and to be disposed of, then it's not. How could something that has the ability to become human be called anything but human? Who determined that we could now make decisions about where life is headed? What makes turning humans over to science okay at the earliest stage of development, but somehow not okay at others? Essentially, the controversy is over this: the fact of whether the embryo should be considered human. Let me leave you with this. The Pew Foundation interviewed the Hertog Fellow at the Public Ethics and Democracy Center in Washington, D.C., author and director of the center's Bioethics and American Democracy program, Yuval Levin. They asked him about the intrinsic worth of embryos, saying, quote, "Do you believe they have the same intrinsic worth as a 5-year-old child or a 50-year-old man?" Here is his response. "I don't think it's right to determine an embryo's intrinsic worth by debating about when life begins. The question of when life begins is a biological question, and the answer is fairly straightforward. The life of an organism begins at conception. The ethical question, however, is not about when life begins, but whether every life is equal, and that's a very different question. I think the embryonic stem cell debate is about the question of human equality. The Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal. Human equality doesn't mean that everyone is the same, or that everyone can be valued in the same way on every scale. What it means is that our common humanity is something that we all share. And to the extent that the debate is about whether it is acceptable to destroy a living human being for the purpose of science, even for the purpose of helping another human being. I think in that sense, the embryo is our equal. That doesn't mean I would think of an embryo the same way I would think of a 3-year-old child, but I would reject a technique that uses either of them for scientific experimentation. Today we have seen what stem cells are, how stem cells can be used, and the scientific and moral reasons why embryonic should not be used. If this is the way our society is headed, it should be stopped. We should not stand for this injustice.